That was a very big sigh.
Yeah, this is a big topic.
It is actually.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Not sure. I'll let you know after today's discussion.
I don't know whether to be excited or afraid. Okay, but you know what? We have to bite this bullet, right?
Yes, we have to. I mean, we worked through quite a lot so far. We touched on the support structure issues. We touched on which problem are we trying to solve, and unfortunately, as much as we want to try and get people to focus on solving the right problem, the reality is that sometimes we would have made a decision that is irreversible, or that just the consequences of which can't be undone, and we need to figure out how to move on from there. So, right or wrong then stops being the issue, because you can continue debating over whether it was the right decision to make or who forced it and what was the reason for making it, and if only I knew better and all of that. You can't undo what was done.
Absolutely. I like that point of departure for this discussion, because you know, if you go into that blame game, you're going to be stuck in that cycle for so long. So I'm almost wanting us to start the discussion to say, okay, so we are here now. You know those maps when you go on holiday and they say you are here? I love it.
Yeah.
So we are here now.
Yes.
Okay, and this is, for me, I think I'm laughing and I'm making jokes because this is a heavy topic.
It is.
And it can weigh down on anybody's soul, regardless of whether you have experienced this, you are currently experiencing it, or you've never experienced it. It's just a very, very hard space to actually be in.
And for those that haven't had a chance to catch episode 1 and 2, the space that we're talking about is you've arrived at the point where the divorce is now happening.
Yes.
Right.
So the divorce is happening, you're in the space, whether or not you can go back or make amends or whatever becomes not so much the issue as much as it is about how do you move forward and what do people experience moving forward. So if I can just open the discussion, and obviously from a woman's perspective, the really, I'm going to use the word heart sore because I can. The heart sore thing for me is seeing so many women who have been divorced, and we're seeing a lot of this more now than previously, right? Who are now being tasked with the role of being single mum, and the reason why they're single mum, that is another discussion, because is it by design or is it by circumstance? Okay.
Yeah.
But the stigma attached to a woman because she's now divorced and she has children, like nobody's going to marry you anymore. Men aren't interested in women who have children already or who have been divorced. And it really, it hurts a part of my soul, because that woman could be such a phenomenal human being, right? And because of no fault of hers or even the partner, their marriage just didn't work.
Yes.
And now you're being labeled for the rest of your life. And you may want to move on. You may need companionship, okay? And you may want to do things in a different way that you did it before because you've learned certain lessons. But there's the society and these social structures that are making it so difficult for women.
Yes.
And men, for that matter, say.
True. And I think when we talk about society, the reason I smile is because it's one of those things where we always say society makes us do this, or society accepts that. And one of the things, and this is a difficult position, I'm not underestimating the amount of courage and conviction it requires to take the position I'm about to mention. But the moment we allow ourselves to be defined by that society, we become part of the problem that we're actually facing, right?
Absolutely.
And if we pull that back to more practical terms, that society that we're talking about, it's our families.
It is. So I was just going to backtrack on what you said when you say, you know, we allow that society, but it's easier said than done. You know,
Yes.
we're both working with clients who were trying to help change that, change that dynamic and that narrative. And I'm putting it out there to everybody, whether you're in the situation, but I can guarantee whether you're in the situation or not, you know of somebody who is in this situation. What are we doing? What are we doing to change things?
Society, in the experience of the divorced couple or the divorcees now, that society is actually our families. Because that's the space that defines how it is that we find our place in the world, right? Now you can go and find your tribe beyond that, but that's a separate issue completely. But the more important thing I wanted to raise is that, like we touched on in episode 2, the support structure that contributed towards the failing of that marriage, that support structure is the same support structure you now need to rely on as a divorcee to find your place and find your worth as a single parent. So spot the problem. The problem is that what we didn't recognize as being a contributing factor before, we're now still going to rely on to find our sense of self and self-worth in our place in the community and society after this massive upheaval, and we're expecting that to work out well.
Exactly. Now, my question to that is, we cannot live in isolation. There are very few people who are able to say, to hell with society, right? Excuse my French, and I'm going to live regardless, and you don't define me, etc. And but the reality of the situation is not everybody is able to do that.
Yes.
So how do we navigate through this? How can we make life better for the people that are in the system?
This is why it becomes so important to understand exactly what got you to the point of divorce, right? And like we already said at the beginning, what's done is done, cannot be undone, right? I think Shakespeare said that or something like that. Anyway, but the point is, we're not trying to fix the past. We're trying to understand and reconcile how we got to that point, so that going forward we can adjust our expectations, recalibrate what it is that we think we're going to be able to draw on, so that we can have at least somewhat of a wholesome life and find the balance that we need to find, especially if there's kids involved, and we'll get to the kids issue in a minute.
Yeah. So for me, the recalibration is really important. I think often we are, as helpers of people, we are presented with scenarios where, and I'm going to say women, because just for ease of use, women would come and say, my ex ABC, we need to make him do this, or he needs to start being a present father, he needs to start participating, and my in-laws this, and I'm being judged, and all these are facts, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's disputing them, but there are things that you're not going to be able to change just yet. We're working towards changing.
And which problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve the problem of what are the perspectives and opinions of the people around you, and you want them to have a favorable opinion of you? Or are you trying to solve the problem of, I've got this situation that I'm in now. Exactly. I am a single parent, mother or father, and conversations with Muslim women, so we'll focus on the woman's experience, right? So I am a single mother with children, with whatever contention still remains with my ex-husband, and within that context, am I going to prioritize what people think of me, or am I going to prioritize about creating my own life?
This is the thing. And what happens, I don't know if it's the process of healing. There seems to be a certain phase after divorce that I have found my female clients cycling in. And it's literally that. What other people are saying, what society expects from me, how unfairly I've been treated. And yes, all those things tick.
And there's one other critical one that I hear very often. What does the future look like for a divorced woman with children in the Muslim community in South Africa?
So the thing is to actually just, and it sounds like tough love, but to just understand that you are where you are. Nothing is going to change that. But what can change is the point that you've you've made. What does my future look like?
What do you want your future to look like?
Is it?
And the problem is that you won't be able to answer that question if you are so defined by what your place in society is about and your place in your family is about.
Yes,
right?
which is really wearing that I'm a divorced woman badge, you
Yes.
know, as bright as a beacon. And it may sound very harsh and non-sympathetic, but the minute you start holding your own power, and the minute you start defining what your future is going to look like, regardless of what people are labeling you as. And it's not easy, you know, by no means am I saying being a single mother is easy.
Yes.
I couldn't imagine having to raise my children on my own, right? So that is a given. But the thing is, you are where you are. And how do you navigate this absolutely challenging, difficult situation that you're in?
Yes.
Bearing in mind, and I'm going there now, that you have children and you have to be wary that you don't use them as pawns in the relationship.
Yes.
I went there.
She went there, not me. But seriously, this is a critical point, because when we get to the point of divorce, and sometimes it's not always our decision to have the divorce, it's sometimes we on the receiving end of it and we have no recourse but to accept it, right? Regardless of how it played out and how we got to that point, because now that we are at that point, we need to focus on what is real right now and what is that we can do right now to mitigate the impact of that on the innocent ones that were caught up in that cycle. Now, this comes back to the point I always like to raise, is that the problems that led to your divorce in your marriage, if you don't reach an amicable solution, even if you just come to a point where you say we agree to disagree, but it's amicable and it's understanding, and if you don't reach that point at the point of divorce, beyond divorce, those problems absolutely guaranteed will intensify and escalate.
Absolutely.
And that's where the power struggle comes from. And that's where the children get drawn into this power struggle, because then to demonstrate my willingness and my commitment as a single parent, be it from the woman's side or now from the estranged father's side, or from the divorcees, right? Now to demonstrate to the community, to society, that I am not the one that was at fault. I am the one that is committed, and look how difficult the other person is making it for me. That's when the children get drawn into it. And we think we're trying to do what's best for the children because we want to have a relationship with our children. No.
Absolutely.
You're using your children to get back at your partner that you couldn't connect with in your marriage.
Absolutely. And my invitation to everybody in this situation, whatever reason the divorce was for, right? I find people, and yes, you will take it personally because it's happening to you. It's a really emotional, trying time,
Yes.
right? But the invitation is to just take a step back and think about the children. If the divorce happens without children, that's another discussion, and that's a far more less complex discussion, right?
Yes, but just
More
as
and
important.
less. But
Just as important.
yes, but for me, take a step back, think about the children. I think when both parents can put their focus solely on the children for a while, it takes the baggage away of what is my pain, what is my story, how have I been hurt, and how have you wronged me. Versus these are children that we are responsible for together, regardless of where we end up in our relationship. And how do we make the world still stable and proper for them?
Yes.
Because, it's really sad to see parents play with their children. And I'm going to say play with their children in the sense of using them against each other. And we've heard stories where people say, yeah, the father's not interested. Okay, if he's not interested, move on. Vilifying the father is not going to do you any favors.
Yes.
Because sometimes your children are going to grow up and latch onto one sentence that you've said badly about their dad, and may experience their dad in a different light, and then you're going to be in trouble.
Yes.
Right? Likewise, doing that is just going to keep you in that rut.
Yeah.
Where if you say it is what it is, he's an absent father, which is probably why we're divorced. So best I move on instead of harping on this, because at the end of the day, those children share the relationship with that man. That's their father.
Yes.
And there may be an iota, one small piece of them that has some kind of respect, love, or honor for that man, and you're ruining it.
Regardless of what, how can I put this without dumbing it down? No matter what the character is of the father, right? And I say this with reservation, but no matter what the character is of the father, we need to understand that if we are in this for the best of our children, we need to recognize that it is still the only fatherly figure that they are going to relate to. So do you want them to grow up feeling bitter about their relationship with their father? Even if that might be justified or understandable. Or do you want them to grow up with understanding about why it is that their father couldn't show up for them the way he needed to?
That's it. Because that then paves the way for some kind of healthy relationship for those children, not necessarily only with their father, but for when they grow up and have relationships of their own.
Yes.
And we can reverse this and make it a mother situation.
Exactly the same
if the
principle.
kids are with the father and the father does the same thing.
Yes.
Regardless of who or what your mother is, that is still your mother.
Yes.
And that is a relationship that you have to help your children understand in its full context, not just from your perspective, which obviously will be biased.
Yes, and that bias is something that we need to become more aware of. Because you won't be aware of your bias if you are focused on whether or not you are meeting the expectations of that microcosm of a society around you, which is your support structure, your family.
Yes.
So if you're going to continue to determine or base your decisions and where you're at in life about how acceptable it is to your family structure or to society at large, you're losing yourself in the process, and chances are you won't be able to make an informed or objective decision about how it is that you need to conduct yourself going forward so that you can get the best for your children that you are interested in getting.
You have just directed this conversation into such a beautiful place, right? Because I strongly and firmly believe that when you have created a beautiful space for yourself, where you understand who you are, love who you are, appreciate who you are, there's so many opportunities that open up from there. Your children have the opportunity to see a living example of a positive role model, of somebody who has strength, courage, character, can go on, live independently, right? So already tick, you're doing something awesome for your children,
Yes.
regardless of whether you're the mum or the dad, right? The other thing is you then learn to create your own happiness.
Right.
So many times, he doesn't make me happy. She doesn't make me happy. They're not supposed to make you happy. You have to make you happy.
And if you don't know what makes you happy, you'll keep blaming other people for not making you happy.
Exactly. So then you learn to create your own happiness.
Right.
You learn to be comfortable in your own skin. Then you will attract people into your life, right? That want to share that.
Okay, there's 2 points you're touching on here and I already forgot the first one, so I'm going to focus on the second one.
Concentrate. Say.
So, this whole thing about happiness, and I've had any number of people coming to me and telling me things like, I call it popcorn wisdom. Where we say happiness is an inside job. Rubbish, it's not. We'll get to that in another episode. But happiness is not an inside job, and happiness is not a choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you wake up in the morning and choose to be happy and you're not happy by the end of the day, you failed at your own choice? No, I don't think so. So happiness is the outcome of you achieving a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment about the things that you set your mind to, and you believe with conviction that what it is that you're doing is for your own good.
Yes. And if you don't achieve it, doesn't mean you're a failure, and doesn't mean you need to be unhappy about it.
Because you don't measure yourself by the outcome of that attempt.
Yes.
You look at the outcome of that attempt as part of your growth cycle towards achieving what it is that you're looking to to achieve. It's a consistent learning process, right?
Yes.
So, oh yes, that reminds me of the second point, which is just as important, right? If someone tells you do it for the children, no, don't do it for the children.
No, I'm not saying.
Hold on.
Okay. I'm not saying
Exactly why I'm raising this point, because it sounds like what are you talking about? Are you insane? We must do it for the children because they're innocent in all of this. Yes, they're innocent in all of this. But if you're going to do it for the children and you're not going to authentically connect with that space that you're trying to create for them, you're teaching them how to be martyrs.
Yes.
So do it for yourself, because in doing it for yourself and understanding that this is what you commit to with conviction and principle and value,
you are showing your children the
and
example.
Automatically you are creating the environment for them that you want for them.
There we go.
Without feeling as if this is for them and you don't deserve it anymore. Because that martyr syndrome, we've got the highest number of living martyrs in our community. Persecution syndrome. We walk around believing that the more persecuted we feel, the more we must be loved by Allah.
Yes.
We've touched on this before.
And that's very sad.
If anything is a toxic mindset, that is a toxic mindset.
So definitely, and following on from that, the best way to create, in my opinion, the best way to create the best space for children is to live purposely for yourself, so that you show them how it's done. Because children live by example. You know, children will imitate what they see. When you create a space that is purposefully yours, and you connect with authentically, then when somebody comes into your life, it's not a thing of I need. So many people is, how am I ever going to find another man? How am I ever going to find another woman?
Who is going to accept me?
Yes. No, it's not about that. It's like, now I have space and I'm willing to share it with another human being. So that desperation, that, oh God, what happens if I die alone? That fear actually dissipates, because it really doesn't matter. And so whether you have somebody in your life or nobody in your life becomes a moot point. And yes, everybody's going to say, yeah, easier said than done, and loneliness. And yes, it is a factor. Okay? But don't jump out of the hot water into the frying pan. This is often another thing that happens. People they get divorced, then they think they're going to die alone, and they're fearful of that. And then they just go into another awful marriage.
Right. Which brings me to the point of, are you doing something out of fear, or are you doing it because you're trying to create something beautiful and beneficial, right? Because if you're trying to create something, the fear doesn't even factor into it. Because then again, it's a learning process, it's a growth cycle, and what you're going to focus on is, okay, I know my aspirational goal, this is where I want to be, I know that's what I'm striving for, this is where I am now, what do I need to continue building on so that I can reach that point that I want? In the process, you're teaching your children how to own their space, you're teaching them how to take control of their own life and create their own outcomes that they're looking for, rather than to rely on others. And at no point in time will you have time or create space to consider, what is society saying about me?
Exactly. Because that if you're so busy building your own life, does what surrounds you matter?
If it does matter, it means you're not building your own life, you're wanting to be seen a certain way by society.
Exactly.
And then you have yourself to blame for the emptiness you feel at the end of it, because even if you achieve those goals, if society doesn't recognize you the way you want them to, or if they don't create the opportunity for happiness for you the way you want them to, guess what? All of that effort you're going to feel was for nothing.
Exactly. So a very simple analogy, I don't know why it's running through my mind now, but I'll just, I just speak.
Unfiltered.
I'm always unfiltered. It's the way to be. If I love bees and I want bees in my garden, I don't go to a beehive and import bees. I plant flowers. And it's not the planting of the flowers that's the action. It's once I've planted the flowers, the bees will be attracted.
And what does that imply? Trust and faith.
There we go.
If you don't trust yourself and you don't have faith that doing the right thing will attract the consequences that action will spawn, then you're automatically going to be driven by fear, and then you're going to try to control outcomes, and you're going to try to deliberately create scenarios and relationships that are going to feed this need that you have. So that need-driven approach is a fear-driven approach.
Mm-hmm.
And what you need to start doing is you need to start questioning whether or not you actually appreciate yourself to begin with. Because if you don't appreciate yourself, you're going to consistently believe that who's going to appreciate me?
Yes.
Who cares? If you appreciate yourself, it reminds me, just to interrupt myself.
Which you always do. You always does this, by the way.
But, talking to the point that you just raised just now, and I want to bring this back to very practical reality, right? Because it's something we experience on a daily basis, especially on social media, and that being like a very consistent theme in a lot of people's lives these days. And what we don't realize is that when we go onto social media or we go into any public space, we find ourselves polarized towards people that we resonate with or that resonate with us.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to have a personal relationship with them or anything, but we'll end up beginning to follow influencers and opinion makers and specific coaches or therapists or gurus or whatever it is, right? People that appear to be leadership authorities in the space that we're looking to get benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the point I want to make about that is that the same way that we polarize towards those centers of excellence and those centers of influence, we need to realize that if we live our truth, similarly, we'll attract people to that that we're offering. So then, do you still want to sit and question, but who's going to accept me? Who's going to want to be with a woman who's got 3 children and is a single parent and blah, 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 blah? Just like all those violin players, kill them.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Own your life. Own your space.
Women, men out there, if you're divorced and you're going through, if anything we're saying is resonating with you, come and be part of this dynamic new way of thinking, which is so liberating, because it's going to free you of all of that weight. Who wants to carry all of that baggage around?
And chances are it's exactly that baggage that was in the back of your mind all the time that contaminated your relationship with your partner all along.
Yeah.
And despite your best intentions, and this is the thing, we automatically assume that just because we meant well, we should have received a positive outcome. No. What's it all saying? If you go through life believing that life must treat you well because you're a good person, then that's like expecting a bull not to charge at you because you're a vegetarian.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You need to understand the nature of what it is you're dealing with, and you need to, more importantly than that, understand your nature.
Yeah.
Because now you're grounded in reality, not in expectation.
Yes. The grounding in reality for me is what breaks the cycle.
Yes.
So I can't emphasize this enough, people. Break the cycle. How many statistics are there out there of children who come from divorced families ending up being divorced later in their own lives?
Yes.
Because they've learned the same cycle. How do we break the cycle? How do we show our children something different?
Yes. And this, when you said that, it reminded me of another one of the common sayings that go around in our community. Not just in our
We're
community.
just full of
it's general.
sayings today.
You're going to love this one. Well, I mean, you're actually going to hate this one. The one thing that always plays through as a theme in our community is that children from a divorced home are children from a broken home.
Oh gosh, please. There is nothing broken about growing up in a household that has parents that are not together. That is just a circumstance. There is nothing broken. Please don't believe it is broken. Don't ever let your children think that they belong to a broken system.
Yes.
If anything, you're going to show them a broken system by saying so.
And you're going to establish that mindset and that stigma in them about the fact that I'm not as good as someone that comes from a 2-parent home because, my parents are divorced, so that means I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that's where children pick up that mindset to say, it must be because of me not being good enough that my parents couldn't stay together. And then you end up with young ones and even the early teens, and this is, it is horribly common, where you end up with young teenagers who convince themselves that it's their responsibility to mend the relationship between their parents.
Yes. What an awful responsibility to place on a young human being.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing it as a society, not thinking of the consequences. okay? That word broken home just rubs me up the wrong way. I know marriages that are worse
Yes.
to be in for children than divorced scenarios. So please, can we stop as a society using that phrase, they come from a broken home? What is broken about the home?
That word broken, we need to stop using it when it comes to homes, to marriages, and we need to stop using it when it comes to people. You sometimes say that they're broken, or I feel broken, or I feel damaged. There's no
I've
such
used
thing.
that.
Yes. And there's no
And
such
I've
thing as a
changed.
damaged human being or a broken human being.
Yeah.
There's someone that's experiencing emotional duress. There's someone that has been through a difficult time and they're struggling to find their way. There's someone that is struggling to reconnect with who they are or their significance, so they behave badly. But none of it is broken, because if it's broken, then you automatically go into the savior mode and saying, well, someone or me needs to fix them.
Mm.
You can't fix anyone, but you can connect someone with the value of who they are. And that's what we need to do for our children. So this cycle of children from broken homes will get divorced later or will have problems, and this is why often you'll find that as part of a marriage proposal, perfectly good child wants to propose to your son or your daughter, and you reject them because of their background. You feed in the very cycle, and you're convincing them that no matter how much you do, you will always be from a broken home, so you're not good enough.
Exactly. And another thing I want to put out there is when people come into your children's lives with the view of creating a union, that they want to marry your child, this whole thing of what's their family history, where do the family come from, why? Does that, yes, okay, maybe it may be good for context, but does any of that give you an indication of who that human being is? Again, are we looking at the humanness behind something and someone? Are we giving that person a chance? They may come from the worst kind of family scenario. They could come from a family of drug addicts, for example, right? Does that make them a bad human being? Are we giving humans a chance to prove themselves?
Yes.
Because that poor child, right, or adult, may have learned such valuable lessons coming from that kind of environment, that has shaped them into one of the most amazing human beings.
And they usually have more gratitude rather than entitlement.
Yeah, so for me, what all this is saying, everything that we've been talking about in this session, in this episode, is about judgment.
And you only judge others as harshly as you judge yourself.
Yes.
And because we're not aware of how much we judge ourselves, because it's been normalized so much, that we automatically assume that if we're not judging others, then we're being irresponsible.
Yes. Or if we're not judging others, we're on a less moral high ground.
Yes.
And automatically, when we start looking at moral high grounds and pedestals and say it is just
Cue the violin players and take out the soapboxes, please. Because this is what we all do. This is what our community has come to.
Yes.
Right? And they probably want to put me in front of a firing squad for saying this, but we are the most judgmental community I've ever come across. And we are judgmental not because that's the way we believe is the right thing to do. We are judgmental because we are insecure individuals.
Yes, because we want that air of superiority.
We are only defined by how we fit into the social structures around us.
Yes.
And that's why appearances and doing the right thing and making sure you have the right associations with the right people of stature and the right social circles and the right economic circles and all of those sorts of things, the wealth standing and the religiosity and all of that becomes critical when who you are as a human being is no longer your focus.
That's it. And I feel that unfortunately this is where our society's at. We're measuring people on all of these other things instead of just looking at a human for who they are and saying, I'm seeing your humanness. It's
Right.
Are you wearing the right clothes? Are you saying the right things? Are you moving in the right circles? Are you coming across as pious enough? Okay, pious enough according to whom? Please remind me, because the last time I heard, only my creator can judge me.
Right. So some watching this might wonder, well, what is this to do with divorce? Well, here's the thing. Here's where it all comes together. Is that this judgmental nature that we have, this theme of right and wrong, compliance, non-compliance, halal, haram that we've got going on in our community, guess what? When you're in your relationship with your partner, you are focused on what's my rights, what's their rights. Am I fulfilling their rights? Yes, they don't have a right to demand more than that from me. I have a right to have this from them, so I expect that from them. Where's appreciation and all that? I'm just doing my job and you're just doing your job, so what do you want me to celebrate about you? Where's the humanness? What's that? We don't know. Why? Because we weren't raised to be humans, we were raised to be little godlings.
Or little components of society, this is where you fit like a Lego piece.
Yes.
This is the only place you can fit in the
Know
Lego
your
scenario.
place.
Yeah. And we need to break that cycle, guys. We really do, because instead of trying to show, I was guilty of this for a long time, and it's amazing how just being on a journey of where you decide that something needs to change and you want to change things for yourself, and it no longer becomes about anybody else. It's very liberating, but I was in that thing of, I'm going to show everybody that I'm Superman, that I can do this, I can cook, I can sew, I can clean, I can kick ass in the boardroom, I can do all of these things, and yes, I can. But the thing is that I was trying to front and show everybody, and if I could turn back the clock, I'd still be so excited to do those things,
Yes.
but for completely different reasons.
Exactly.
And I just think it would have a different outcome.
Completely.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts on quite a big. I mean, 3 episodes is definitely not enough to do justice to the whole thing. But I'm hoping that, if anything, we've planted some seeds about what it is that we're doing. That is creating these self-fulfilling prophecies, where we get to a point of a total breakdown in the relationship, and when we get to that point, we don't resolve the problems that got us to that point, but we try to exit because we're tired of facing those problems.
Mm-hmm. And then the other important thing is, once you have found yourself in the position of you are divorced, how to take things forward. So by all means, we're not saying don't acknowledge the pain and the suffering and the challenge that you're going through, because that also is not healthy.
Yes.
Right? You need to, if you need to have a pity party once in a while, just put out the candles and invite a few people, or have the party by yourself and have the pity party. But it shouldn't become the theme of your life.
Yes.
Understand that you need to move on, but also understand what you need to move on with and how to do it, and that it really needs to be a very person-centered approach. It can't be about what are people going to say. And also suspend judgment. If you find yourself being judged by society, perhaps take a step back and say, how am I judging myself? And then when you stop judging yourself and start understanding who you are, then what society thinks of you really fades into the background.
And do you want to feed that cycle of judgment with society?
Exactly.
I'm reminded of 2 really beautiful reminders that I received from people that I was engaging with this week. One was this morning, and the other one was just yesterday. And the one thing that was that someone told me was that marriage is about 2 people being together but always apart. And they couldn't quite understand that analogy, so to speak. And the imagery that I developed in my own crazy mind about it is that, imagine it to be 2 pillars upholding the structure. Right?
I love it.
And the 2 pillars upholding the structure is the father figure and the mother figure, right? And between the 2 of them, they are upholding what it is that they're upholding together. Which brings me to the second one. And the second thing that I was reminded about, which is something that I often say as well, is that marriage is not about compromise. If someone tells you marriage is about compromise, it's not. Marriage is about contribution. But what are you contributing towards? Are you contributing towards fulfilling what you need from the relationship? Or are you contributing towards something that the both of you are trying to create? So if you look at that imagery again, two pillars holding up the structure, that structure is what you guys are working towards. What are you contributing towards this bigger, greater, more beautiful thing that must be larger than the life of the both of you together? And when you realize that, understand that when you pull one of those pillars away, the other person carries that structure alone. And from time to time, you're going to have wobbles. But understand that when you do that, that's where you have to lean in and assist each other in keeping that up and continuing to focus on what you're trying to build. The moment it becomes about compromise, you start transacting, you start keeping score, and then it's, I'm doing so much, but I'm not getting as much in return.
Yes.
And when that sets in, understand that is the beginning of the path towards a breakdown of the relationship.
And the beauty about that structure that you speak of, Said, is if you go into a relationship or a marriage with that mindset, right? The structure itself becomes the thing. It becomes so solid that even if one withdraws,
Stands on its own.
yes, the foundation is so set
Yes.
and it's so firm that it can withstand
Yes.
a little earthquake.
And then when you're raising your children within the same value system,
Yes.
guess what happens to that structure? It becomes even stronger,
Yeah,
more beautiful, more elaborate, and much more resilient.
because if you started off as a couple on the same page about your parenting style, that should never change if
Yes.
you are divorced. You are still parents. Nothing changes about that.
Yes. You just don't have to look at each other's faces every day anymore. That's it.
Exactly. But you're still the same parents and you still have the same parenting philosophy.
And responsibilities.
So why does it need to change?
And just because you've got a contentious relationship with your ex-partner doesn't mean that your children have to suffer for it.
Absolutely.
So, final thoughts.
But we can go on for
We can
ourselves.
go on.
Yeah, my final thoughts are there is hope. It's not bleak, it's hard, definitely. Make the effort to just work on yourself and understand yourself. And if you take care, my dad always used to say, if you take care of the sense, the rands see to themselves, you know. So take care of that, and your children will by default then flourish because of it, and always keep them
Yes.
in the top of your head.
And just to build on the idea of it's about contribution, not compromise.
Yeah.
So understand what it is that you're wanting to build together. And if you find yourself in a space where you're already stuck in the cycle and you want to break the cycle, the biggest mistake that a lot of people make is that when they want to break a cycle, they want to try and correct someone else's behavior. No.
Target.
When you want to break a cycle that you're in, you change how you respond to that cycle, and immediately the response in that cycle towards your behavior has to change, because what they were responding to before is no longer available.
Absolutely.
It always starts with you.
I think that's the beautiful place to end this.
And that's it. I'm hoping that we've done some justice to navigating divorce, and inshallah we'll continue the discussion on the platforms that we made available for the discussion. And I can't wait to dig into our next topic, which we haven't decided yet, but we will soon.
Yeah, and please, when you watch this, please comment. Let's spark debate. Let's spark discussion. If you agree with anything we've said, let us know. And if you disagree with anything we said, please let us know. We love chatting to you.
And that's it.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.